Imagine being stopped by the police for no reason other than looking suspicious. Now, imagine the shock when the officers realize you're not just any teen. They've just detained the police chief's son. This is exactly what happened to 16-year-old Jordan, a quiet, well-spoken kid who thought his biggest worry that day would be finishing his homework. Instead, he found himself handcuffed on the street, accused of something he didn't do. The officers had no idea who they were dealing with, but what happened next shook the entire department to its core. How could this mistake happen? And what would the chief do when faced with his own son's story? This isn't just about one incident. It's about what it revealed in the system. Stay tuned as we unpack the tense moments, the unexpected fallout, and the changes no one saw coming. Jordan was walking home from a friend's house in a neighborhood he'd been through countless times. It wasn't flashy or run down, just an ordinary part of town. He had his hoodie up because it was chilly, his earbuds in, zoning out to his favorite playlist. That's when the patrol car pulled up beside him. Two officers stepped out, their tone sharp, demanding to know what he was doing there. Jordan was confused but kept calm, explaining he lived nearby. His explanation wasn't enough. They accused him of loitering, then said he matched the description of someone involved in a nearby incident. Jordan knew better than to argue, but inside he was panicking. He hadn't done anything wrong. Meanwhile, one of the officers radioed in, unaware that the name they'd soon run was about to change everything. The question wasn't just about Jordan. It was about the system that saw him as a suspect first. As Jordan stood there, his heart racing, the officers began asking rapid-fire questions. Where are you coming from? Who do you know around here? Their voices carried an edge of suspicion, and Jordan could feel the stares of neighbors from behind curtains and doorways. He answered every question calmly, but it didn't matter. They were already convinced he was hiding something. One of the officers moved in closer, hand hovering near his holster. Jordan tried to stay composed, but the weight of the moment was crushing. He had always been taught to respect authority. But what do you do when authority doesn't respect you? Meanwhile, at the station, the name Jordan Bennett was radioed in. The dispatcher froze. That name wasn't just familiar. It was tied to the man in charge of the entire department. Back on the street, the officers remained oblivious, their behavior becoming more aggressive. But everything was about to change. Jordan's phone buzzed in his pocket, but his hands were still cuffed behind him. One officer glanced at the screen and saw the name Dad flashing repeatedly. "Who's trying to call you?" the officer demanded. Jordan hesitated, unsure of what to say. His father had always taught him to handle situations like this with patience, but nothing could have prepared him for being treated like a criminal. "It's my dad," Jordan finally said. The officer scoffed, assuming it was just a nervous excuse. At the station, the dispatcher wasted no time alerting the police chief. Chief Bennett's face turned pale as the details were explained. His son, detained, suspicious activity. He could barely contain his anger as he rushed out of the office and into his car, sirens blaring. Back on the street, Jordan stood silently as the officers ran his name again. One of them began to sense something was off, but before they could piece it together, headlights appeared in the distance, speeding toward them. Jordan's heart sank, realizing who it had to be. The speeding car came to a screeching halt, and Chief Bennett stepped out, his face a mix of fury and disbelief. The officers froze as he approached, realizing too late who they had detained. "What is going on here?" the chief demanded, his voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. Jordan looked up, his eyes filled with frustration and relief. Before the officers could explain themselves, the chief's phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen, his expression shifting from anger to alarm. It was a message from another officer on patrol. A suspect in a robbery had just been apprehended a few blocks away. The description? Nothing like Jordan. Chief Bennett's jaw clenched as the realization hit. His son had been detained for no reason beyond assumptions and bias. But before he could address the officers, Jordan spoke up, his voice steady. "If I weren't your son, would you even be here?" Chief Bennett froze at Jordan's words, the weight of them cutting deeper than he expected. He knew his son wasn't just questioning him. He was questioning the system his father represented. Before he could respond, one of the officers nervously chimed in, trying to justify their actions. He matched the description. "We were just following procedure," the officer stammered. But the chief wasn't having it. "Procedure? You didn't even confirm the facts before cuffing him," he snapped. "You saw a black teenager walking down the street and decided he must be guilty. That's not procedure, that's profiling." The silence that followed was deafening. The officers looked down, realizing they had no defense. Chief Bennett removed the cuffs from Jordan himself, his hands shaking with a mix of anger and shame. He turned to the officers and ordered them back to the station, making it clear this incident wouldn't be swept under the rug. But as Jordan and his father walked to the car, the chief's phone buzzed again. It was a report from Internal Affairs. This wasn't the first time these officers had been involved in incidents like this. Jordan looked at his father, his expression hardened. "This isn't just about me, Dad. You've got work to do." The chief nodded, the gravity of the moment sinking in. For the first time, he saw the cracks in the department he trusted and the responsibility he had to fix them. In the days that followed, Chief Bennett made good on his promise. The officers involved were placed on leave, and an internal investigation was launched into their actions and prior complaints. But for Jordan, it wasn't just about punishment, it was about change. He urged his father to focus on training, accountability, and rebuilding trust within the community. The chief listened, realizing that his son had seen firsthand what too many others experienced daily. News of the incident spread quickly, sparking conversations both within the department and the town. While it was a painful experience, it became a catalyst for much-needed reform. Jordan, though still shaken, found a sense of purpose in sharing his story, hoping it would inspire others to speak up and demand better. As father and son sat down one evening, the chief looked at Jordan and said, "You're right. This is bigger than us. Let's make it count."